Reading through Jeremiah over the last couple of weeks hasn't been great fun. It's not hugely entertaining. It's quite negative, quite destructive, it appears. The message to God's people is, you're going to suffer. Get ready for it. It's coming to you. So it's somewhat of a lightness today in our reading from Jeremiah that we hear God bringing him and teaching him a lesson. He brings him down to the potter's shed, and in the potter's shed he teaches him how the potter develops his skill. Not by getting it right the first time, not by getting it right even the second time, but using exactly the same material over and over again until he makes something that he regards as perfect. I have a little experience in this area. Don't giggle now. Many years ago, as part of my pastoral connection with my parish school, I went as part of a school tour to an art camp. And the teachers there were very enthusiastic, all engaging, had no issues around ageism or anything else. So they thought to themselves, to encourage the children, let's see if the adults would like to try first. And of course, because I was somewhat standing out at my height, somewhat differently dressed from everybody else, guess who was picked first? So I was escorted down to this potter's table. I began to realize it worked a bit like an old sewing machine. You know the thing? You got a little pedal underneath. You could vary the speed at which it turned. And of course I set to it with the usual enthusiasm of someone who didn't have a clue what they were doing. And as I progressed, it did indeed begin to resemble something different from how it started. The sides of the pot began to develop. All seemed to be well. And then at the inappropriate time, I added more water to it, and it collapsed in front of me. Having been so courageous, they took mercy on me and told me that was fine, and they would contact me if they needed any further examples. They duly used whatever I had misused, and they turned it into something that the children could bring home with them, which was all very reassuring in the end of the day. But forever after, among a certain cohort of children, I was constantly reminded of my high point of achievement in the art camp in County Wicklow. What is this about? Jeremiah is sent down to the potter's shed, and he has a lesson to learn. In fact, you might even say it's the turning point in his message to God's people. They've been told what they've done wrong. They've been told what the consequences of doing wrong are. And now the message is about recreation. It is about once more putting right the things that are wrong. It is a message of forgiveness. It is a message of rehabilitation for a whole nation. And Jeremiah is the one who, thankfully, I'm sure at this stage of his prophecy career, is glad to have some good news to impart to God's people. The book of Philemon in the New Testament is one of the shortest books in the Bible. In fact, there are only 355 words in the entire book. It's not so much a book as a letter. It's a private letter. A letter sent to a man called Philemon. Now let's have a little think about who he is first. Paul writes to this man It's quite clear that they know one another. Paul speaks in glowing terms about him, and then he has a request. He says to him, "Our mutual friend, Onesimus, has let us all down. He has made wrong decisions, but he has turned a corner, and I know how much he treasures your friendship. It is now time, at my request, to forgive him, to allow him another chance, to reconstruct his life, and to do what needs to be done." Philemon is regarded as having been a bishop in the early church. And Philemon, we don't know what the relationship with Onesimus was, but it appears something like somewhere between this man being what we call a tenured servant or a slave. But whatever has happened in this house, whether it was an act of dishonesty, whether it was an act of betrayal, he has done wrong. Paul isn't suggesting that he has been perfect, but Paul is suggesting that there has to be a road back for him, a new beginning for him. Otherwise, all will be lost. And Paul even makes a legal commitment to pay back anything that has been lost as a result of this man's ill behavior. Jesus writes, or Jesus speaks to the crowd. He sees a crowd following him. They were following him everywhere. Jesus was a first century celebrity. Thousands of people would meet and greet him and would follow him. Some were looking for healing, some were looking for other things. Some were looking maybe for hope and direction. And he turns to them and says, "If you want to be my disciple, you have to turn your back on everything you know, everything you treasure, everything that's valuable to you in your life. And the minute you do that, you can come and follow me. But you must calculate the price of what this means for you in your life." Set against the context of our two previous readings, where we've been asked to consider forgiveness. I think that's one of the great things we need to leave behind as followers of Jesus Christ. We need to leave behind all of the things, all of the grudges, all of the disagreements, all of the things we treasure against others. We have to leave them behind because that's what God requires of us. Now, don't get me wrong. We're all human here. We know what it's like to get that blast of adrenaline when our temper rises, and when we feel that we want to square off the score with someone else. We can feel the sense of satisfaction even when we hear the smallest bit of news of somebody else's failures. We can rise and celebrate when we hear that others are getting things wrong. But Jesus says that all has to be left behind. One of the sacrifices we have to make is to take away all the debts that we think we're owed. Take away all the hurts that have been caused. And in doing so, we might discover something new in ourselves. Not only will we equip someone else to move on in their lives, but we may even be equipping ourselves. Because even though it may be enjoyable, we might be as imprisoned in the past as the very person with whom we have a grudge. Paul is calling Philemon to let it go. to let it go in the cause of the Christian family, to let it go in the cause of following Jesus Christ, to let it go because it is a burden to him and it is a burden to Onesimus as well. And it is only in the freedom that comes from that will they all be able to move on and see new potential in their lives. It isn't easy. God is calling us to walk away from many things which we seem to think from time to time are giving us contentment and peace. But he's calling us on to a greater sense of peace and fulfillment in our lives every day. Are we able to leave it behind? Are we able to say to ourselves, the act of following Jesus is more important than anything else? If we can find ourselves at least setting out on that journey, and believe me, that journey is never ended. If we can set at least out on that journey, the path for us all may be so much easier and straightforward. Wouldn't it be a tremendous thing indeed if that sense of forgiveness could take root in our families, in our communities, in our country, if it could take root in our world today? How many places of unnecessary suffering could be removed? Jesus is calling his whole creation to turn away, to grab the future, embrace the forgiveness, be accepting of the forgiveness that is owed to ourselves, and in doing so to find that the world is truly changed for the better.